No game today for the Minnesota Twins, but the pennant race pushes forward anyway, with the Blue Jays coming to Target Field Friday for a weekend series. Let's tell you about that and other happenings as we get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to destination for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. A reminder also that the Locked On Twins podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm co-host Dave Brown, a professional ball writer since 1998 and a BBWAA member since 2012. Please follow me on Twitter at Answer Dave Brown, if you like. Across cyberspace from me is Brandon Warren, a Twins watcher for 30 years, who not long ago covered the team on a daily basis professionally. He asks, by the way, that you unfollow him on Twitter at Brandon_Warren with an E at the end. In this episode, we are going to look ahead to a weekend reunion with the Blue Jays, whose 2023 season ended at Target Field when the Twins exercised some postseason demons. We'll look at some notable names from around the league who have been placed on waivers as teams try and get their postseason roster ducks in a row before September 1st. And we'll see what's up with the Guardians and Royals. Guardians off, Royals playing right now as we speak, and it's not going well. Before we do, Brandon, can you tell us about who is bringing us this fine episode of Locked On Twins?
Yeah, today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And by the way, we're still talking about the Twins and Blue Jays coming up here on Friday. It's going to be Pablo against Gausman, a little Game 1 revisit, and you can catch every pitch of the Twins hometown broadcast with Chris Atterbury and friends on Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app and search Twins again. 7:10 p.m. first pitch at the Taj Mahal. It's Pablo and it's Gausman.
Yeah, that kind of leads us into what we're going to talk about first. It's the Twins and Blue Jays have played already this season, so they've kind of met again. It was in Toronto, so it's not quite the same thing. This is on the home ground. Last year, the Blue Jays season ended with the Twins knocking them out in the wild card round. The Twins really need a vibe injection or something. They just have been, I don't even know if they've been flat, but they just need something good to happen. So maybe other good things can happen too. And I think Pablo Lopez has been really on his game here in the last month or so, pitching as well as he has all season. I would expect that to happen again. The Blue Jays haven't been terrible. They've lost the last two, but they're out of it. You know, they're not really in the playoff hunt in any way. So I don't know if they're coming in here trying to be spoilers, or they're just trying to get through the season, or I don't even know. They're just trying to be as professional about it as possible. But do you think this is a chance here for the Twins to kind of, I don't want to say hit rock bottom, but just stop falling and get back up?
Yeah, almost like you get the dead cat bounce. And I don't mean that derisively. I mean, you can only take care of what's in front of you schedule-wise. And having Gausman out there for the first one, I mean, I don't know how much the data points matter. Again, pitcher versus team, because players and everything changed so much. But Kevin Gausman has never, ever pitched well against the Twins. He has an ERA over 6. In fact, among active pitchers who have thrown at least 50 innings against the Twins, his ERA is the highest. So that doesn't mean squat in terms of what tomorrow looks like. But to me, it shows that, there's reason to believe the Twins can at least go into it with some idea of, hey, at least we've gotten to this guy before. And true enough, in the playoffs, I mean, that's a lot of the same guys. So it's not as though it's completely without merit. And beyond that, I mean, what I'm watching for Toronto is their pitching staff has been pretty good in August. They're top 5 for starter and reliever ERA. The Twins are not going to have to play Bowden lighten up Francis, who's been just absolutely incredible. He pitched today. So it'll be a little easier for them with Gausman, Barrios, and Yariel Rodriguez. But at the same time, too, no free lunch, no easy nights, no breaks. It's going to be a series that they'll have to fight. They got a good chance to sweep, but they also have a chance where, if you have a letdown and they get swept, things get ugly fast.
It's I've seen some chatter about Royce Lewis. He's been, I just would call it a slump. He's not hitting the ball real hard, but his numbers have been for the past month or so since he came back from the previous injury have been about league average. But for him, we expect better things and him to get hot again. And with Buxton and Correa out of the lineup, it would have been nice to have Lewis hot recently, and maybe that could have offset some of the losses. But it's not, I'm not saying anything is Royce Lewis's fault, but circling back to what this all reminds us of was, you could call that first playoff game against the Blue Jays maybe the Royce Lewis game. It was kind of a national coming out. He had been hot anyway, but it was just kind of another indication of the big moments, him stepping up in those big moments. And I think, there's so many positive memories about that I can't help but think that maybe he's going to spark them tomorrow and then get back on the schneid here.
Yeah.
In September.
There's a line in an Outkast song about being the opening act, the headliner, and the after party. And that's what Royce Lewis was in that game one last year. And you know how Royce says, I don't slump, or I don't believe in slumping, or whatever it is? Took me back to, and maybe you'll remember this because you and I are, older than probably a lot of our listeners. But Royce says, I don't slump. There was a video game commercial where they were just starting to get into like the action capture stuff. And they're like, all right, I think it was Marshall Falk. And they're like, all right, now show us how you fumble. Like, they're like, hey, show us how you, and he's like, I don't fumble. They're like, okay, but hypothetically, if you had to fumble, what would it look like? And so I think they ended up throwing him like a baby doll or something. And he fumbled the ball, and they're like, there we go. And so I get the reminder of like, Royce doesn't slump, just like Marshall Falk doesn't fumble. So they've had, if they could get everybody going like they're capable of, this offense could be just so stinking good. I mean, Matt Wallner has carried this offense. Trevor Larnach looks like a completely different hitter than he did early on in the season, or at the very least, the last few years, the first 2 years of his career. They've had different guys that pick it up. It's just a matter of, if you have 2 or 3 guys carrying your offense, but you lose a game 5-3, you might get good numbers overall, but be like, oh, you didn't get a big hit here, you didn't get a big hit there. It would just be nice to see it all come together at the same time, because there's just so much talent and depth on this roster. And by the way, I know I'm running long here, but the Twins have 4 hitters on the injured list right now. Every single one of them was drafted 15th or higher in the MLB draft. So, I mean, that speaks to the level of depth that they're missing on offense.
And they're still, generally speaking, the lineup is still, most of it is producing. I would say Kepler is, and maybe one other guy, and Kepler and Lewis are really the last 2 weeks the only guys who aren't hitting. Jeffers has gotten back to hitting like he was kind of earlier in the season. And they're 8th. What's that?
Martin's holding his own.
Yeah, Martin's holding his own, and other players, like you mentioned, have been great. And they're 8th or 9th in runs scored in the league. So the offense, generally speaking, isn't the problem. I think I just want to see Royce Lewis get hot for Royce Lewis. I think I looked it up since August 15th, 12 games, which is not a lot of games. 8 for 41 with 16 strikeouts. So he's, in a rut since the 30th, since he came back from that injury. 228, 293, 436, 99 WRC adjusted. So that's not, for 30 games, lots of great players go through stretches like that. But what the Twins need a jolt, and Lewis is like a Jolt Cola, but human form. So I think that's true. Maybe you can find it somewhere in Eastern European laboratories. But
I've been looking.
let's
But hang on one
have
second.
you?
Actually,
Yeah.
a while ago. You know what? Maybe on the other side of the break, I'll ask you something because this might take a little while to unpack, and I don't want to steal your second segment thunder, but it's a good thing to talk about. So we'll do that right now.
I thought you were going right to commercial.
I probably should have, but you know what I don't have in me is some liquid IV, which would certainly help with this bit of malaise that I'm feeling. No, we're getting to the end of the day, and you know what? It's good to have yourself hydrated all day long and overnight even too. You know, we dehydrate ourselves simply by sleeping, and so whenever you need hydration, liquid IV is the way to go. It's just a stick and 16 ounces of water, just a very standard bottle. And you've got hydration, and it's delicious. I think that the thing that I come back to is there's so many different flavors that you can try them all and find the ones you like or ones you don't like as much and really hone in on them. Obviously, this popsicle firecracker that they came out with recently has been a real get for them. The festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors, absolutely delicious. But again, go on the website and you will have your pick of the litter. I had recently, I say this all the time, but the pear flavor was tremendous. Acai berry, lemon lime, pina colada, you name it, they've got it. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. It's powered by Liquid IV Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Got 3 times the electrolytes of the other guys and 8 essential vitamins and nutrients. They're always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. So if you've got some restrictions, chances are you can still fit them into your repertoire. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV, and you can get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. And, you know, as we're recording, I have the Gopher game on in the background. It's halftime, and they're handling North Carolina pretty well. But if it wasn't for tonight's show, who knows? Maybe I would have hopped on Game Time and, found some tickets because TCF Bank Stadium, outside of a pretty nasty storm that pushed the game an hour back, looks like it's been rocking. Looks like it's been buzzing. There's very few more fun places to go than a college stadium that's buzzing. And right now I said TCF Bank, it's Huntington Bank Stadium now. I keep forgetting that they changed that. But, Vikings played there a couple years, so maybe you can forgive me. But, these live events that you got coming up, whether it's sports, concerts, comedy, you name it, Game Time has got it. Just search your city or your local area, and sometimes you'll find things you didn't even know were happening. For instance, sometimes I'll just like to scope out the concerts. Childish Gambino's coming over here, and I had no idea until recently, and that's one of my favorite musicians. I don't know if I'll get out there, but it's certainly something I'm going to look on Game Time for. Game Time has all these great options. Make sure you toggle the all-in option, and you'll get all-in pricing, by the way, so you know from the get-go how much it's going to cost you to set foot in that venue. So you don't have to worry about any bait and switch or, some of the stuff that the other guys do where you look like you're going to pay $20 and you pay $40 at the end. None of that. And I love the panoramic seat views where you know exactly what the view is going to be from your seat before you even hit buy. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply. But again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Did you have an anecdote or something? Did you?
Well, do you want to play Hit Doctor? Do you agree with me that Royce?
Do I want to play doctor?
Well, not nurse.
Sure.
Play doctor sounds terrible.
Wet nurse.
You got me reeling here. Royce, I feel like Royce is taking really questionable plate appearances lately, getting himself out more, not swinging at maybe the pitches he should be. I don't know. I feel like he's up there trying to maybe do a little too much put this.
Is he asking Edward Julien for advice? Is that what we're hearing?
Well, I think he's doing the opposite of Julien. Julien swings at nothing, and Royce swings at everything. And if you could create one player out of them, you'd have a pretty dang good hitter right now. But I don't know. I think Royce is a little too antsy at the plate right now, and it's showing.
Yeah, well, we alluded before to the players that the Twins don't have in the lineup right now,
Right.
and the level of talent that where they're taken to the draft and the profile and all that. I'm sure Royce is probably putting it on his shoulders as the team kind of struggles here to not stay in the race because they're still right in the middle of it, but struggles to take advantage of the Guardians at the top. Kind of faltering here as everybody thought maybe things would even out for them. The Royals had done a better job of taking advantage of that. The Twins probably getting inside their own head a little bit, thinking, "Oh, we're running out of time here. We've got 5 weeks left, and we're not doing it." And that's the whole mental part of baseball. That's kind of fascinating and a little sick too, because it's just endless. But that works for you too. It's a long season, and your last 30 at bats, your last 50 at bats don't have to be like your next 50 at bats. And it's just a matter of getting your head in the right place, getting some luck. That's sort of why I hope that the atmosphere, reminding everybody of the playoff games last year and Game 1 especially, is going to do that. And I think that would go a long way towards just getting the Twins right and able to play the best version of themselves here in the last 5 weeks.
I have a friend whose opinion I trust. Maybe a little bit of a loose cannon with his baseball takes, but played at college at a high level, just an all-around good dude. And so I trust him with a lot of the baseball stuff he says. And he was upset that Royce Lewis did not play in the series finale against Atlanta. He says, when you are on the ropes like this, even if a guy's struggling, you got to have your leaders go out there and play. And then not only that, but there was an off day Thursday, which we're in the midst of right now. Does he really need 2 days off in a row? Maybe that's a mental reset. And maybe that's something we'll look back on as Rocco really doing a nice job resetting him. I don't know. I just want to hear your thoughts, because I could go either way, honestly. And I think a 2-day reset at this time of year could prove actually quite valuable.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to say something they don't have time for. It's funny. I don't know the answer. This is the answer to this question is something that I don't even know if the Twins know the right answer. I think there's a little bit of clutching and grasping. And here's the thing, though, about Lewis, that we're very aware of this. He's got injury issues. He's got soft tissue issues. You try and push him too much, and all of a sudden he hurts something. And then, you're talking about 2 days off in August, September. He's got 10 days off or 15 days off. And then where are you? I think that's what Rocco is guarding against. I think it is possible that your friend's instinct is correct. And it's possible that the Twins are making a mistake, but also, remember how I said before, it isn't. They could use Royce Lewis hitting at full strength, but they still have had a good offense without him, and that is sort of a sub theme of the Twins are going to do this as a team. They're not carried by one or two stars, even though they obviously miss the ones that they don't have right now.
I mean, they could be if everything went right. They're just not.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I think you want to guard. You want to, you see how Rocco sees how Lewis is struggling at the plate. A lot of times those guys don't pull out of those situations like in one or two at bats or in one game. So he's like, well, if Lewis were going a little better, maybe he would have kept him in the lineup, but he isn't necessarily contributing that much right now. So are we going to miss him? If he's not out there? And it's again, these guys, they come back, they play half the game anyway, a lot because of pitching changes and substitutions. So it's it's a little we overrated a little bit. We are not there, and
Right.
we don't know exactly what's going on in Royce Lewis's legs and what the plan is for keeping him healthy. Maybe they're walking a fine line. That would that surprise anybody? That
No.
the athletic trainers are like, let's keep this. This is delicate. So I think it is worth questioning, but I don't know necessarily that we can just rail against what they're doing and say it's wrong.
It reminds me a little bit of early in Paul Molitor's managerial tenure, and this is kind of a direct opposite of Rocco. He let Max Kepler face a lefty reliever. I want to say it was like Oliver Perez of the Guardians or somebody like that, and everybody was freaking out. He can't hit lefties. What are you doing? What are you doing? And all I said was, listen, I know what the data says as well as anybody else. But if you trust a guy early in the season, show him that you trust him and show him that you are giving him the opportunity to do something, it may prove valuable later on. And maybe that's the case with Royce here. So anyway, Kepler later in the year gets a big hit against Brad Hand or somebody. Again, another left-handed reliever, and maybe I'm leaning too heavily on the Cleveland connection. But there is a lot of connective tissue, pun not intended, with situations like this where sometimes a move a month or a week or 2 weeks earlier pays off much later, and a lot of fans don't make that connection. If Royce Lewis comes back this final 31 games or whatever it is and has a 950 OPS the rest of the way, the Twins catch up, win the division by a game or two, who knows how instrumental back-to-back days off at the end of August when you're reeling against the Braves and the Blue Jays are coming down. There might have been value in that. And that's the beauty of the game, is that we don't know, but we can speculate, or we can just talk about it as, hey, I'm thinking this could happen. You know what I mean?
Trust isn't the right word, but I certainly defer to Rocco when it comes to how do you handle the clubhouse, how do you handle the individuals, all kinds of information and data we aren't privy to exactly what's wrong with Lewis or anybody who has an injury. And
who knows better about playing through something than Rocco Baldelli?
Yeah.
I mean,
how do we forget that?
You've heard Rocco's story, right?
Yeah. Well, his mitochondria.
No. I'll tell this at the other side of the break because we got a bunch of stuff to jam in here. But let's take this last break, and then I'll tell you my Rocco story really quickly. So we got to show some love for PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active subscribers, PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you and the numbers. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And you get to play with the multipliers too. If you pick some of the more risky picks, the multipliers go up. Sometimes, you put down $20, you get back 400. If you hit on, I think it was 6 picks that I was looking at the other day where if you hit on all 6, it was turning 20 into 400. But it goes as high as 100 times if you really want to get risky and edgy. And it's in as few as 4 correct picks. So again, you really can just kind of, it's almost like going to a fantasy, a DFS buffet. You kind of pick from here, you pick from there. And you know what? You turn it into your own slate, which I think is absolutely incredible. It's such a cool idea, such a cool invention, and PrizePicks is at the forefront of it. Also, if you sign up today and play $5, you will get $50 instantly. You don't even need to win. So be like me and not win, and you still get the $50. It's guaranteed. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's LOCKEDONMLB for your promo code. And you'll get a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Dave,
your Rocco story.
So I'm coming up from downstairs at Target Field after a game, and I come out of the Twins clubhouse and I get on the elevator, and the Rays are in town, and I look over. And in the elevator with me, I kind of recognize this guy. So I look down. I learned you can look at their bags because a lot of time they'll have a little luggage tag. Oh, it's Rocco Baldelli. I'm like, hey, Rocco Baldelli, with the Rays at the time. And I said the first thing that came to mind, and it was, I'm really sorry with how your career went. Who says that, right? And he, in all his he looks at me, he smiles, and he goes, "Me too," and just couldn't have been more gracious, couldn't have been nicer. And so, anyway, he gets hired by the Twins that off season, and I went up to him after the intro presser, and I'm like, "Do you remember this?" And he goes, "Yeah." We just had a really good laugh over it, but the press conference room and the elevator are like literally next to each other. So it was like such a funny juxtaposition of, oh yeah, I just had my worst moment and now you're the manager and I'm going to have to talk to you every single day. And he couldn't have been better about it.
He does. But the bigger point is nobody is in a better position to know what it's like to be dealing with what Royce Lewis has been dealing with and Carlos Correa and Buxton than Rocco. I think it's it doesn't necessarily give the Twins an advantage, but what it should do is signal to people that maybe they should let him manage and worry about, well, this guy should have been in the lineup because it's the last game against the Braves, I mean, that's all nice, but yeah. So there are, we got to this a little later than I wanted to, but there are people on waivers, Brandon.
Yep.
There are people on waivers that might help the Twins. I don't think any of them are going to, but here are some names that we know. Teams place basically everybody, or it could be anybody on waivers. Yep. See if they can get somebody to take them. Obviously, you can't make a trade, but you could lose a big contract that you don't want to pay. Tommy Pham is on. Who is that?
Alex Rios comes to mind back in the day.
Oh, sure. Oh, Tommy Pham, Taro Estrada, Taylor Rogers, former Twins lefty, Tyler Matzik, Travis Jankowski, who just killed the White Sox season. I'm kidding. He just saved a home run from Andrew
he just stomped on a already flat grave.
I call him Bob Grossman. It's Robbie Grossman. Mashing lefties, you were right. He's hitting 279, 388, 430 versus lefties. He's not doing a damn thing otherwise. But and Nick Lopez.
Yep.
And Nick Lopez, who, he's from Naperville, Illinois, and he plays in the White Sox. And
he'd have a lot more value if he hit at all. But for a Twins team that has, I think, enough utility infielders, probably not going to go that direction. But Nicky Lopez could be a nice fit for a playoff team, late inning defense. I don't know if he can run, very well.
He can run, but he doesn't steal bases anymore. He's not good at it. I don't know why, because he's still like 28, but he doesn't have base stealing ability anymore. So
it's not like he's Terrence Gore, where he's going to be on the roster to do a very specific thing. But, a defensive first player on your postseason roster is not the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Robbie Grossman would be a fit, but they've, like you kind of intimated, they've ridden the Manuel Margot train / experience. It sounds like it's like a Universal Studios ride almost. They've ridden it to this point. Why jump off now? And so for that matter, when Robbie used to do good things when he was with the Twins, I would just tweet in all caps Robbie, and people would know. Like they just knew, get a double in all caps Robbie. I wouldn't even say what he did. That's just part of my charm. He would make sense, and especially too, if he reports in a day or two, you don't have to dump anybody outside of, you'd probably have to DFA somebody like Randy Dobnak, which again could happen. I don't know. To me, Grossman would make the most sense, but I think I agree. Nothing's going to happen.
Well, Taylor Rogers would make a lot of sense. I mean, a lefty in the bullpen, Rocco wouldn't have to use Thielbar, or
you might actually.
I'm not sure that Okert isn't coming back somehow.
$12 million next year for Rogers.
That's the thing. That's the thing. That's a lot of money for a guy who wouldn't pitch at the end of a game, So if it was $6 million, even if it was $6 million, I don't think that they'd want to afford that, because they had other people they could have brought in for $6 million and they didn't do it. Yeah,
Rogers 4 years ago at his best, or whatever it was, that's a lot more valuable than right now. He'd be another key cog in a solid bullpen, but he's not the Taylor Rogers of yore.
He's not my Taylor Rogers. No, he's not mine at all. And it's a deal where, they spent the offseason like getting other teams to pay most of the contract of the players that they were adding. Manuel Margot, most of his salaries taken care of by 2 or 3 other teams. Nobody even knows. Justin Topa is being paid for by, someone's aunt in the Midwest and the Mariners and a team from who knows where. They can't get anybody really to pay for Rogers' salary other than your own. So that I think Falvey's going to Google that and he's going to say, no, we're not bringing in.
Unless you thought you could flip them in the off season to offset the salary, but at the same
you probably could, but then you would have to be the salary offsetter. Then you would be paying, the Twins would be, or you'd get back something that wouldn't be, you'd get something back for him that wouldn't be very interesting.
No, I just mean, laundering him basically, just saying, hey, you'll be useful. We'll pay you. Yeah, you just write it off.
I wanted to get into, who should we be rooting for?
Let's do it.
Rooting against.
If you're not in a rush to get off the line, I would be happy to do that quickly here.
I know, but we're our 32-minute window, our blood barrier. So, okay, the Royals game tonight, you didn't really have a chance to look at it. Oof. It went from nothing was happening, it wasn't very interesting at all, to the most gonzo, ape bleep, crazy. They had a crazy Royals like a Piranha Twins, Royals baloney, Guardians Statcast 240 batting average expected rally in the 7th inning. Salvador Perez hit the hardest ball of the inning, about 92 miles an hour, but it was a grounder that Jeremy Pena, who's a good player, just booted. The third baseman, what's his name? Whitcomb? It's supposed to be Bregman. Shea Whitcomb. It's supposed to be Bregman. Bregman got tossed in the 4th inning for arguing balls and strikes. So the Astros had their backup third baseman, and he can't field a ground ball. Somehow the Royals load the bases, and Jason Isbell, who's a songwriter, I think, dumps a. He didn't even make the Crawford boxes. It just bounces fair by a foot, 350 feet from home, clears the bases, and it's like, what is this? Are the Royals possessed by the Guardians all of a sudden with the luck demons? But that's okay.
They Freaky Friday'd them in the last series,
just for an inning.
Yeah,
but it all went to heck after that, because in the next inning, the Astros came back. They took the long story short, they took the lead, but Lucas Erceg came in again. He's been really good until his previous performance against the Guardians. Could not hold the lead, but worse, took a ball off his pitching hand, a liner hit right back to the mound, had to come out of the game. But when he threw to first to try and get the runner, he led Vinny Pasquantino right into the path, and Pasquantino hurt his hand or something, and he had to come out of the game. The Royals have lost like 4 starting players in the last 3 games, even as they've kind of made a push for first place. So they ended up losing the game. I don't know what's wrong with Erceg and Pasquantino, but
what injury did Pasquantino have last year?
It was a shoulder.
Okay, so it wasn't related to this. All right.
No, it wasn't that. It could have been. I don't know if people remember, like Cliff Floyd with the Mets years ago, a ball where the infielder threw too much to the coaching box side of first base, led him right into the runner, basically chopped his arm off, and he was never the same after that. It wasn't that bad, but it was a play that was like that. So it was not Vinny Pasquantino's shoulder, surgically repaired. So
it's funny that when you and I were talking before the show, I had switched off my ESPN window, and so I just looked back to see how it ended, and I knew that the Astros had the bases loaded late, and that Doug DeCenzo was coming up. No, that's a old Rangers player. She gone. But somebody named DeCenzo was playing for the Astros. I managed to pull Shea Whitcomb out of my head as a player I've heard of. DeCenzo is not one I've heard of, or DeCenzo. Walked, and then there was a single and a run scored and an error. And like you said, through the first 6 innings, 2 runs scored. Through the rest of the game, 7 runs scored. the people who are ready to write a game off after the second, third inning, it always makes me laugh because baseball is like it's like the version of if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan. If you want to make baseball laugh, tell him the game's over, because that's the beauty of it. No clock. You can't throw fastballs 80, dial it back. Every single pitch matters until the end. And that's just the beauty of the old ball game.
As Joaquin Andujar used to say, you can sum up the game in one word: you never know. And it was just, you don't never know. But we kind of did a tangent there about who are the Twins? Do the Twins? We're still rooting against the Guardians, right?
Mhm.
They figured out whatever the Royals are doing. Do the Twins need to be more afraid of what the Guardians can do here? Have we learned one lesson too many from them to count them out? Even though we've seen them kind of come back to earth and even things out here late in the, or are the Royals the actual more difficult opponent? What should fans be rooting for here in the last 5 weeks?
Chaos. No, I hadn't realized that the Royals had won the first 3 games of the season series against the Astros. So this was a nice comeuppance. I think the Guardian, you want to talk about team running on fumes. I think the Guardians are on fumes. Their starters have been bottom 5 in ERA for the bulk of the season. Right now, they're, I think, third from the bottom, behind like the White Sox and the Rockies or something like that. Like, they're way down there. And the teams above them are so bad. Bullpen, 6 of their pitchers have appeared in more games than Royce Lewis this season. With Kansas City, it's not so much tangible. It's kind of like, dang, this team's kind of got some mojo. This team's kind of got that special sauce. And it doesn't mean anything. Again, I know I've always been a proponent of data in baseball, and so usually things can be explained. But I still leave enough room in my mind for, like, sometimes teams just have it. The Giants every other year for a while there in the 2010s just kind of seem to have it. And so I don't know. I think the Royals are an interesting team. But I honestly, I have more disdain for the Guardians. But I also look at the Twins and just think they're better than both of them. If they can just do what they're supposed to do, they should be okay. But I've thought that all year. And now, they're 3 games behind, or 3.5 games behind, or whatever it is. It's
the Royals do have some quantifiable things that make them a force to be reckoned with, I think. They're not. Yes.
He's hitting 406 since July 1st. 406 for almost 2 months.
Salvador Perez. Pasquantino's not having a great year, but he's knocked in a bunch of runs.
He's basically doing a Josh Naylor impersonation, isn't he?
Yeah,
basically?
He's kind of like Josh Naylor light, if you will.
Well then.
So, and I mean that in terms of production.
Yes.
So, all right, let's wrap it up. We'll talk more about who to fear more in the coming weeks, Kansas City or Cleveland. We'll maybe devote a bigger segment to that. But in the meantime, hey, you got to talk about Paul Sullivan, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Make sure that after you make us your first listen every day, your second listen every day should be Paul Sullivan, not that Paul Sullivan from the Chicago newspapers, on the Locked On MLB podcast. Our Sully is an award-winning television producer, if I'm remembering correctly, but just an all-around hilarious.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Surely I've done my homework here. But anyway, he blends his humor with national expertise on Locked On MLB, and he's wanting to get you ready for the playoffs as we trudge through the dog days of summer. And boy, are they the dog days of summer. It is nighttime, and we're at 90% humidity where I live. So still pretty sticky out there, but you can get
swimming outside.
Exactly. You can get ready for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on the Locked On MLB podcast. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Twins. For my cohort, colleague, co-pilot, Brandon Warren, this is Dave Brown saying, what do we say? Will Casilla? Is it Casilla? Alexei Casilla tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Alexei Casilla.
Bye.
Good Lord.